Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's lecture on the principles of design. The principles of design are rules you must follow to create an effective and attractive design composition. Visually, this functionality is interpreted by making sure an image has a center of attention or a point of focus. One of the most difficult parts of talking about the principles of design is figuring out just how many principles there actually are. Search for principles of design and Google will return results for articles that include anywhere from 5 to more than a dozen individual visual design principles. Even the articles that agree on the number don't necessarily agree on which ones should be included in that number. So I'm going to go over 8 principles that seem consistent in their inclusion in various lists of principles of design and art. These are balance, emphasis, movement, repetition, rhythm, proportion, variety, and harmony. In addition, there are about another dozen or so secondary design principles that are sometimes included as basics. For example, the Gestalt principles, typography, color, and framing. However, we will only be covering the main ones here. But if you're interested in learning more about more principles, I encourage you to look them up. While this lecture will focus on graphic design, as that's my specialty, there are similar elements and principles for illustration, animation, photography, and almost every visual medium. Knowing the elements and principles of design will give you language to say what makes up an image and why it works or doesn't work. You can follow along with the slides used in the lecture in the link in Canvas, but they'll also be here in this video. So first, let's begin by talking about the principle of balance. Balance focuses on distributing the visual weight of design elements to create a cohesive design. It helps establish unity between elements to effectively communicate your message. You can typically achieve this through symmetrical, asymmetrical, or radial balance. Symmetrical balance focuses on the even distribution of visual weight to create a harmony within a design. Elements on each side of design have an even weight. Asymmetrical balance uses asymmetry to create a dynamic and visually exciting design composition. Elements on one side of the design are balanced by elements of a different weight on the other side. Radial balance is similar to symmetrical balance, but the elements are arranged around a central point instead of like half and half. So, how might you use balance in design? You can use grids and guidelines to help you position elements symmetrically or asymmetrically, and strategically use white space to prevent your design from looking cluttered. Next, emphasis is the part of the design that catches the viewer's attention. Emphasis is created by contrasting an element with other elements. Contrast creates a noticeable difference between elements to add visual interest and emphasize important information within designs. This design principle is crucial since the human eye naturally gravitates towards elements with higher contrast. While contrasting colors are a common way to emphasize contrast, you can also apply it by using different sizes, textures, shapes, weights, and alignment of elements in design. For example, the color red against a white background, or a large, bold font for a call to action. To use this in your designs, you can focus on the most important details in your design and use a higher contrast to make them stand out. However, avoid applying too much contrast, as this can lead to visually jarring and confusing design. Go as far as you can, but once it starts to feel disharmonious, just back off a little. Third, movement is the way a user's eye is guided through design. This creates a visual journey leading them from one element to another. Placing elements along the natural eye path ensures important elements are seen and understood. For instance, artists will create pathways within their artwork so that a viewer will automatically look at a piece in a certain direction. Movement is also used to show physical action on a still image, such as showing an action scene, a character running away, dancing, or fighting another character. So, to use movement in design, you might follow common eye tracking patterns like the Z pattern, F pattern, or layer cake pattern to guide the placement of design elements. You'll want to strategically place your most important information in areas viewers are naturally drawn to. Next, repetition is when identical or similar elements are reused throughout designs. You can achieve repetition by repeating colors, textures, shapes, patterns, or fonts. This creates a sense of interest and balance and establishes a visual rhythm to guide viewers' eyes seamlessly through the design. Repetition can also help establish your brand identity to create memorable and impactful designs. For example, a cohesive color palette and font types strengthen brand recognition. You can use repetition by creating a brand guide or design system to ensure consistency for repetitive elements across projects. You can also use repeated words or imagery to push your point and create interest through repetition. Fifth, rhythm creates a sense of movement, flow, and visual interest within design. It's similar to repetition, but focuses on the placement and spacing between the repeated elements. There are four types of rhythm you can apply to visual media. Regular rhythm uses the same clear pattern and spacing between repeated elements. Random rhythm follows no distinct pattern, and elements are placed at random. Flowing rhythm creates movement and fluidity by repeating patterns in a curved pattern using lines and organic shapes. Progressive rhythm subtly changes each repeated element to show a gradual progression. Repeating a composition's elements can be a great way to achieve unity through a creation. But getting a viewer's interest requires something distinctive to be included, and that's typically about adding variety to gravitate interest. So you'll want to choose the rhythm type that aligns with your design style to create your desired effect. Use a grid system for a regular structured approach with consistent spacing, or play around with direction and fluid objects like shapes and lines to achieve more flow and dynamism. Next, proportion refers to the size and weight of design elements in relation to one another. Maintaining proportion creates visually pleasing balance between objects and is a great way to establish visual hierarchy, as large objects are naturally seen as more important. Designers use the concept of proportion to create sensations such as perspective, realism, balance, and elements of surprise in their work. It is an important design principle that evenly specifies the element that needs more focus than the other. A good proportional design is easy on the eyes and creates harmony and balance between the elements. It gives a clear picture of what is supposed to be seen and gives a visual hierarchy to your design. There may be instances where you're creating a humorous design that requires more exaggerated proportions to emphasize your unique design style. Play around with proportions to see what feels right for your content type. To use proportion, you'll want to use grids and guidelines as a baseline to ensure consistent proportions between elements. Consider each element's visual weight and balance heavier weighted objects with lighter ones to create harmonious proportions. Next, variety means adding a change to disrupt the monotony of a composition. It creates visual interest in design. With the use of variety in your design, you can quickly save it from becoming boring and monotonous. You can draw attention and entice your audience with a few simple changes. It creates visual interest and energy. However, keep in mind that the use of excess variety in your design can make it overbearing and overwhelming, ultimately turning it chaotic and difficult for the general audience to understand. You can use variety by adding curvy lines next to straight lines, geometric shapes in the midst of organic shapes, or even bright neon colors next to dark gray tones. You create interest through this contrast and by creating this variety. Lastly, but certainly not least, harmony or unity ties all graphic design rules together to ensure your design feels harmonious and cohesive. When designs have unity, all elements flow seamlessly to form a united composition. To achieve harmony, focus on consistent design elements like colors, fonts, and shapes to create rhythm and harmony. So let's go over some examples of principles of design in use. In this page from Superman Red and Blue number 5 by Daniel Warren Johnson, we can see several principles in design being used to strong effect. Color is used as a point of emphasis, with the red cape keeping the character as the point of interest. We also see proportion used with the character against the illustration of Earth to both illustrate who Superman loves and is proud of, which is everyone, as well as the sort of weight of his responsibility for everyone. Next, in this photo of Sharbat Gula taken by Steve McCurry, we see a strong use of color to create a sense of interest and balance. The green of the background is reminiscent of the green of her eyes, and her red scarf makes that green stand out to an astounding degree. This is an iconic photograph for a reason. Lastly, this poster for Ogden Twilight Concert has plenty of visual interest through the use of repetition, variety, and emphasis through contrasting color and elements. However, it may have fallen into some of the pitfalls one can fall into when a designer adds too much to a design. While visually interesting, it's difficult to understand and parse its purpose and the information it's offering. Remember that design is made by being able to communicate what it needs to properly. No matter how interesting the visuals are, if it does not communicate, then it is failed design. And I would consider this failed design. So, for your assignment, I want you to find a piece of visual media that you consider either good or bad. This can be any visual media: a page from a comic book, a frame from a television show or movie, a photograph, a web page, product packaging logo, anything else you can think of. Then I want you to note at least one element of design used in that visual media and then one principal design it used well or badly. Lastly, tell me why the use of that principle makes or breaks that media. Let's look at an example of what I'm expecting from you. This advertisement is from the Dead Beats music label. While it uses color and repetition in an interesting way, I think it ultimately fails as a piece of design. It doesn't use emphasis in a useful way, and I find it difficult to figure out what this is an advertisement for. If this is for an event, there's also just a lack of information about the date or location of the event. There's a lot of text, and I'm just not really sure what the purpose is. Once you've written your short paragraph and posted your picture that you're referencing in the Canvas submission box, submit it to complete this assignment. I hope you all enjoyed learning about the elements and principles of design this week. And next week, we'll be getting back to learning more about different tools within Photoshop. Until then, I hope you all take care, have a great week, and I will see you at the next lesson.